Pearson, real Pearson, she could not tolerate the treatment, the harsh treatment of Mrs. Fitzgerald towards Cyril, Doris and George Pearson. And ultimately, when she told all these, because we saw last day that Mrs. Actually her wife, means here real Mrs. Fitzgerald, and apparently it was Mrs. Pearson, that she actually threatened George Pearson that she would slap on his fat face. So Mrs. Pearson, actually the real wife, he could not tolerate that her husband should be insulted in such a way. So last speech of Mrs. Fitzgerald here. Mrs. Fitzgerald means, we know this is actually Mrs. Pearson. She told, getting up with a certain decision, "That's enough, quite enough." Now George and Doris stare at her bewildered father and son. They were looking at each other. Up to this, we completed up to page number 49. So today, let us start from page number 50. To George and Doris, means this is Mrs. Pearson. Original Pearson, those who was looking like Fitzgerald, because we know they have, don't forget that they have interchanged their soul. So Mrs. Pearson was looking like Fitzgerald was looking like Pearson, and here it is Mrs. Fitzgerald looking like Mrs. Fitzgerald, but originally it is Mrs. Pearson. So she told to George and Doris, "Now listen, you two, I want to have a private little talk with Mrs. Fitz." Now she was telling to Mrs. Fitz, because actually this is a slip of her tongue. She was looking like Fitzgerald, but she was actually Pearson. And now if she told that she wanted to talk to Mrs. Fitzgerald, then it would be very odd, isn't it? How could Fitzgerald would talk to Fitzgerald? That is why she just controlled herself out of slip of tongue. It was a slip of tongue that I want to have a private talk with Mrs. Fitz. She just told Mrs. Fitz, and then she controlled. She corrects herself. Correct herself hastily. Hastily means quickly. She corrected herself with Mrs. Pearson. "So I will be obliged if you will leave us alone for a few minutes." And here she told, she implored Doris and George that I want to talk privately to Mrs. Fitz, means Mrs. Pearson, because yes, we know if she would tell Mrs. Fitzgerald, it would be very odd, because how Mrs. Fitzgerald would talk to Mrs. Fitzgerald. So she corrected herself, and she told that she wanted to talk to Pearson, and she told them that please leave them alone. Here told, leave us alone. "I will let you know when we have finished." And she also assured these two, actually Doris and George, that she would actually tell them when they have finished their private talk. "I will let you know that I told. Go on, please." And she implored to George Pearson and Doris Pearson to leave the room. "I promise you that you wouldn't regret it. There's something here that only I can deal with." And she also told to them that the only she could deal with these things, and they cannot change it anyway, but she would try to change it. At the George rising, George was sitting, so he stood up and told, "I'm glad somebody can." She told, "I'm glad. Cause I can't means I can't means I could not manage my wife, because whenever I entered this afternoon, I saw, actually this is the problem, that whenever he entered, he saw that his wife was drinking stout, and no tea was ready. And not only that, wife told him that other people at the club, they make fun of him and they call him Pompium Pipiers. And so he told that he couldn't control his wife, and he was happy, he was glad that somebody else was there who could control his wife. This was there. "I can't. Come on, Doris." And father actually asked the daughter, "Come on, Doris." Means now Doris and George, they actually went out of the room. Now in that room only Pearson and Fitzgerald was there. Now George and Doris exit left, and they go, and as they go, Mrs. Fitzgerald moves to left of the small table and sits. Now she eagerly beckons Mrs. Pearson to do the same thing. Beckons means here gathering with hand or head, gesture with hand or head, gesturing, do it like this. Now Mrs. Pearson, actually though it was looking like Fitzgerald, but Mrs. Pearson was imploring Mrs. Fitzgerald to do the same, because in the time of exchanging their soul, Mrs. Fitzgerald told or assured Mrs. Pearson that changing of soul means coming back to the original soul. It's not in a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. It would not be very tough to do that. So Mrs. Pearson was imploring Mrs. Fitzgerald, so please let us come back to our original self. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald. Now, Mrs. Fitzgerald, here Mrs. Fitzgerald is telling Mrs. Fitzgerald. Why? Because Mrs. Fitzgerald was actually Pearson. And she was telling Mrs. Fitzgerald, we must change back now. We really must. And she was imploring to Mrs. Fitzgerald, actually Pearson. She was imploring to Mrs. Fitzgerald, we must change back. We really must. Now, Mrs. Pearson, here Fitzgerald, actually Pearson means original. Fitzgerald raising why? Fitzgerald is telling to Pearson, what? Pearson. Now means Fitzgerald again, because this has gone for enough. I can see they are all miserable and I can't bear it, and that is the problem. I can see they are all miserable. Question mark, who are they? They means here George Pearson, Doris Pearson, and Cyril Pearson means her husband, son, daughter, and they are miserable, but the condition is very pitiable. And she told that I can't bear it. Bear means tolerate. That being a true mother and a true wife, a loving wife and mother, actually she was imploring Mrs. Fitzgerald to please change ourselves, because I cannot tolerate. I can't tolerate that my family members have been, roughly treated by you. You have insulted them so much. I can't tolerate this. So she implored Mrs. Fitzgerald to change back to their own original self. Now here, Pearson, a bit more of the same would do them good, making a great difference already. Now, actually, Fitzgerald was not interested to change, to come back to the original self then and there, because Fitzgerald was telling that a bit more of the same would do them good. She was telling that as a treatment, as I was giving to them, if I could give them a bit more, that would actually do them good to them. That would be good for them. A bit more of the same would do them good, making a great difference already. And Fitzgerald was happy. Fitzgerald was telling that we've already made a great difference. Now she moves to right of the table and sits, and Fitzgerald went and sat there. Now Fitzgerald. Now, actually, Pearson, though it was looking like Fitzgerald, means written Fitzgerald, but we know it's original Pearson. No, I can't stand any more of it. And here, true mother and loving wife told, actually confessing, I can't stand anymore. I really can't. She told, I really can't. We must change back. Hurry up, please, Mrs. Fitzgerald. And she was imploring Mrs. Fitzgerald, please change, means come to our original self. I can't tolerate it anymore. Now Pearson, well, if you insist means just hankering on means just telling this repeatedly. So Fitzgerald ultimately said, okay, if you insist. Now Mrs. Pearson, yes, I do, please. Pearson told, Fitzgerald means actually Pearson told, yes, I do, means I really insist you, please. She snatches her hands across the table eagerly. Mrs. Pearson takes him, and she snatches her hand across. She snatches her hands across the table. Mrs. Pearson takes him. Really. Now Mrs. Pearson, quiet now, relax. Now Mrs. Pearson means Fitzgerald actually hold the hand of Mrs. Pearson, and now she hold quiet now. Just be quiet and relax. Sit in a relaxed posture. Mrs. Pearson and Mrs. Fitzgerald stare at each other, muttering exactly as before. Aristatadam, Aristatalam, Aristatalam Dambona. She just chanted the same mantra that Mrs. Fitzgerald had chanted when they had exchanged their soul. Now it's time to come back to the original soul. So here Mrs. Fitzgerald chanted the mantra again, that Aristatadam, Aristatalam, Aristatalam Dambona. They carry out the same action as before, going lax and then coming to life. Going lax means as if they became dead as if life had gone from them, and both of them again came back to the life. But this time, of course, they became their proper personalities. So that's the end, that they came back to their original personality. So the drama started with the original personality. In between, we saw that they have interchanged their personality, and by the end of this drama, again we saw that they have come to the original personality. So far we had to read this as Mrs. Fitzgerald means it was Pearson, and Mrs. Pearson means it was Fitzgerald. But now after they have interchanged, they have come back to the original self. We should read it that yes, Mrs. Pearson means Mrs. Pearson and Fitzgerald means Fitzgerald, because they have come to the original self. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald, this is original Fitzgerald. Well, I enjoyed that. Yes, I enjoyed that, because Mrs. Fitzgerald, we saw she was very rough and tough, very strict woman. She wanted to dominate other, and being Mrs. Pearson, so far she dominated over the family members and Mrs. Pearson, and that's why she was telling that yes, I enjoyed that. And Pearson, I didn't. Pearson took it, I didn't. Now Fitzgerald, well, you ought to have done. You ought to have done. You should enjoy it. Now listen, Mrs. Pearson, don't go soft on them again, else it will all have been wasted. Now Fitzgerald was giving this warning to Mrs. Pearson that you must be very strict. Don't go soft on them again. And Fitzgerald was telling, don't be so soft on them again, else it will all have been wasted. It will all have been wasted, because by the Hearst treatment, I have already earned a position for you in your family. If you do soft, if you go soft to them, then you will get back the same thing again. The people will not give you any respect to you. But so far, I have earned this place for you, so don't waste it by doing so soft as you were earlier. Fitzgerald has warned this to Pearson. Now Pearson, I will try not to, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Pearson told yes, I will try, Mrs. Pearson, not to be soft. Now Fitzgerald, they have not had as long as I'd like to have given them. Fitzgerald, as if Fitzgerald was regretting that they have not got the treatment as for the long time that I have planned. Means Fitzgerald wanted to give them more harsh treatment, and that is why she was not so much satisfied. She wanted to give this rough treatment for a bit long time as well, but on request, actually, she interchanged herself, and they came back in their original self. So that's why Fitzgerald told that don't here they have not had as long as I'd like to have given them. Another hour of two's rough treatment might have made it certain, and she was telling that if I could give another 1 or 2 hours rough treatment, then it would be better for them. It was certain that they would be placed in their original self, because we know that in the way of a conversation, she told that when the son asked him or daughter asked him that, mother, what you are doing and what has happened to you, then a mother told that, no, nothing, I'm not doing anything, I'm just putting you in your place. So Mrs. Fitzgerald was regretting that another 1 or 2 hours, had I got it, then it would be better, because why not? Because she was enjoying all these, and why she would not enjoy this? Because she was very dominating woman, and she did not have probably we don't know about her family members, so she wanted to dominate over the family members of Pearson, and for a good reason also, because the family members they did not have any regard for their mother and wife. That is why Fitzgerald actually giving the treatment. But she was not totally satisfied, because she wanted another 1 or 2 hours for this rough treatment, and then she was telling that should be certain. Now Pearson, I'm sure they will do better now, though I don't know how I'm going to explain. Now Pearson is telling, the mother is telling, yes, I'm certain that it would do them a good, because now they would behave well with me, but I don't know how I would explain to them. Now, though I don't know how I'm going to explain to them, Pearson is telling to Fitzgerald that I don't know that how I would explain to them. Fitzgerald, severe, and this Fitzgerald became very serious. Don't you start any explaining or apologizing, or you are done for. Fitzgerald told, no. Fitzgerald again warned to Pearson, don't you go for any explanation, or don't you go for any explaining or apologizing. If you do it, you are done for. You are done for means you are finished. Because if you tell to your parents, if you tell to your son, daughter, and husband that the rap treatment they received from me, it was not actually me, it was Mrs. Fitzgerald. We have changed our soul, then everything would be wasted. And not only that, it would be they would behave roughly with her, as well as they would behave roughly with Mrs. Fitzgerald as well. So Mrs. Fitzgerald, Pearson was so gentle, was so volatile, she could not understand that what would be the result if she would explain all that what had happened. So if she would explain all to to her husband, son, and daughter. And that is why at this Mrs. Fitzgerald was so much scared, and Mrs. Fitzgerald told, don't go for any apologizing or explaining, because if you do this, you are done for, you are finished, you are finished if you tell this that what had happened so far. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald again is telling, Pearson telling with spirit, it's all right for you, Mrs. Fitzgerald, after all, they are not your husband and children. Now this is, this is a bit, Pearson was sounding a bit ungrateful, isn't it? That Mrs. Fitzgerald has done all these things just to gain the place for Mrs. Pearson in her family. Now, when Mrs. Fitzgerald warned her that you must not go for explaining or asking for any apology, at this Mrs. Fitzgerald told that Pearson told that you can't understand Mrs. Fitzgerald, because it's my family, so it's tough for me to do all this. They aren't your husband and children. And Pearson told, yes, you can't understand because these are not your children or your husband, so it would be tough for you to. Now, Mrs. Fitzgerald impressively, at this Mrs. Fitzgerald told, now listen to me. Mrs. Fitzgerald actually told to Pearson, giving another set of suggestion to Mrs. Pearson. Now listen to me. You admitted yourself you were spoiling them and they didn't appreciate you. Now, Fitzgerald told to Pearson that admitted me is you accepted this, that you think that your children were getting spoiled and they do not have any they don't have any regard for you, they did not appreciate you. Any apologies, any explanations, and you will be straight back where you were. And again, Fitzgerald told to Pearson that if you go for any apology, if you go for any explanation about what had happened so far, then you'd go straight to that position. That position means where your family members did not give you any respect, any regard. They just used to behave you just a maid servant in the family. So if you do any explanation, if you tell them what had happened so far, then they would do the same thing with you, and the place that I have earned for you for this right treatment with your family members, it would be all wasted. I'm warning you, dear, and Fitzgerald is telling, I'm warning you, just give them a look. Give them a look means look with the authority, a tone of voice. A tone of voice means you must be authoritative in a tone. It's not, it should not be very secky, and it should not be that you are afraid of them. Now and then, to suggest you might be taught with them if you want it to be, and it ought to work. And Fitzgerald told that you should give this message to your son, to your daughter, and to your even your husband, that if time requires, then you can teach them what to do, and you have already taught. So you just try to make them understand that you have done everything. You have treated them with harshly, and you must not be so much harsh with all the time, but you should make them clear to them that if time requires, if the situation demands, then it can be harsh. Just you have been so harsh with them, and it ought to work. And Fitzgerald told, I feel it should work. Anyhow, we can test it. Now Fitzgerald told, okay, I want to test it whether this rap treatment had any work, whether it had worked or not. Now Pearson, how? Pearson is telling how we can check. Now Fitzgerald, well, what is it you would like them to do that they don't know? Stop at home for once. So Fitzgerald told Pearson, because Fitzgerald wanted to test whether that rap treatment would work or not. At this, Fitzgerald asked this to Pearson, you tell me that what you want that your family members should do, though they themselves don't want to do that. Do you want them to stop at home at once? Pearson, yes, and give me a hand with supper. Pearson told, yes, I want that my family members, my daughter, my son, my husband should stay at home, and they should help in making the supper, means, and preparing the dinner. Fitzgerald, anything you would like them to do that you enjoy whether they do or not? And again, Fitzgerald asks this to Pearson, that is there anything that you want that they should do, whether they would enjoy it or not, but you enjoy it and you want them to do anything, is there? Pearson hesitating. Pearson couldn't understand that what he wanted that my family members should do, but she did not want. Well, yes, I like a nice game of rummy, but of course I hardly ever had one except at Christmas. And she told her, yes, I want to play with rummy, I want to play, rummy is a card games, and I want to play with rummy because I don't have any partner, and yes, really, except one day in the year, that is in the day of Christmas. So here Fitzgerald, and Pearson had come to their original self, and Fitzgerald was, suggesting Pearson not to be so soft with them, otherwise she would be straight to the position where she was. And now Fitzgerald was testing that whether that treatment would work or not. We will see whether this would work or not in our next class. So today I feel you've understood, and thank you very much for joining my class, and bye bye. It's time up, so goodbye for today. Now we will meet in our next class. Thank you.